So an interesting thing happened when I was doing some tests. I was checking out, I don't know if you guys saw the last video where I was talking about minimum specs to run a couple of games. Looking at AAA titles, minimum specs, got to, we did Halo Infinite, we did Battlefield 2042, and I noticed something weird about Battlefield 2042. The minimum specs said that a newer processor was actually inferior to an older processor with more cores. The newer processor was the minimum requirement, and the recommended requirement actually had a processor with 2 more cores, but was actually older. And it kind of confused me a little bit. So today we're gonna kind of take a look at that. So, although I don't have the Intel, both the Intel processors in question, I do have something similar. And some other minimum specs and all that stuff. We can look at the Ryzen 5 1600, and we'll pit it against the Ryzen, it's a Ryzen 3 Pro 4350. Now, this 4350 happens to be an APU, so it's got a little bit less of a L3 cache, I think it is, on it, but it's not going to make much of a difference in our case because we're just looking at the cores. We're taking a 6-core 12 thread and we're matching it against a 4-core 8 thread that's a newer generation with a faster clock speed. So we're trying to find out what the differences are there and what it means as far as gameplay and all that stuff, and even availability, because as you may know, the 1600, you can't load Windows 11 on that. It's an older processor. Now, the Zen Plus processor you can. The Zen Plus is actually that 1600, and it's the last 2 digits on it, the model number, are AF. This is the OG. This is the regular 1600 AE, which is built on just the regular Zen architecture, which Microsoft says cannot be upgraded to Windows 11 because it doesn't meet the whatever safety protocol or security protocol or whatever is involved. So we went back and we took a look and we wanted to see just what exactly would be the advantage or disadvantage of playing these two against each other. And best way to do that, just regular benchmarks, right? So the test setup and the reason why we did it, we went ahead and did it on a B450 motherboard. I believe that was an Asus motherboard. I'll go ahead and list everything here. We did it with 16 gig of DDR4 memory running at 3200. We did it with an RX 6600 XT for that ASRock Challenger series video card. We want to make sure that the GPU is at least matched or above what these CPUs would normally do, so that the CPUs would be the bottleneck and not the GPUs. So in other words, we want to make sure that the CPUs have free range and they can do what they want. And that's, all the cards I've got right now are about in that range. So we left all the settings on 1080p or below, and so we make sure that the CPUs themselves would be fighting that out and not having to rely on any kind of bottleneck from the GPU. Went ahead and did it with, I believe we have a 1 terabyte SSD in there, and some other and sundry items. But basically, the test setup was set up so I can make it as equal as possible for both CPUs. So we went ahead, and I always start off with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It's it's a CPU intensive type game, and it's a good way, a good barometer, I guess you could say, to start out with to kind of see where we're going. And it was just barely, but the 1600 just edging ahead of the 4350. But you could say it's a margin of error, but all the tests were pretty consistent, and it stayed that way consistently. It was above the 4300. The 1600 was above the 4300. So the 6-core 12 thread did do better than the 4-core 8 thread, even though the 4-core 8 thread has faster clock speeds. Now, that was not the case with the next couple we tested. We went ahead and looked at Borderlands 3, and you could say that the margin of error swapped on going the other direction. With Far Cry 5, same thing. It just a little bit more of a widened out lead. And then we went to Forza Horizon 4, and even more of a lead. So you may be thinking it's okay, all right, we'll just go ahead with a 4-core 8 thread instead of the 6-core 12 thread that's a little bit older architecture. The new one is going to be better than the old one in any case. Well, then we go back to Horizon Zero Dawn and we find out just exactly what the advantage of having 2 more cores is, in spite of the fact that the other one clocks faster. When I run CSGO and a couple of synthetics, for the very most part, the 4350, again, the newer one came out on top, but the core count did work out better. CPU-Z, when I ran with all the cores, does actually beat out the 4-core 8th ray, which you would think it probably would. However, the 4350 took all the rest of the tests. So if you've got like a Ryzen 1600, the original Zen, or a 1300X, which is a great processor, or 1700X, which is a great processor, anything in that range, should you go ahead and just get a step or two up with a 4-core 8-thread? My answer to that would be, for the price right now, no. I honestly think what your best bet ought to be is go with something like a 5600G or maybe even a 5700G if it's priced right. When you go back and you look at some of these prices on some of these processors, trying to get a newer, like a third generation, a Zen 3 or any of those in a 4-core 8-thread. Well, first of all, the new ones, the Zen 3, any 5000 series, there's no 4-core 8-thread yet. But if you step back and you go to the 3300X, those you almost can't find. 3100X you can't find. And by the time you go back and you look at the 400 or 4000 series, like the 4300 or the 4350 or something like that, by the time you find that on eBay or Alibaba or something, it's going to cost you a couple $100 or between 200 and 250 bucks. So my advice to that is, if you're looking for something, you might as well go for something like a 5600G. It's priced probably around the same price, or maybe even a little bit cheaper sometimes, than the 5600X. It's got integrated graphics, and if you can find a 5700G, I would buy that instead if it's about the same price, or maybe only a few dollars more, because that is actually going to be 8-core 16-thread instead of 6 cores 12-thread. So you might even get a better processor for the price that you could try to hunt down on one of these 4-core 8-threads. My other advice to that is, if you're willing to do a whole new build, maybe go with the Intel. Right now, the 12400s and 12600s are great deals, and the only thing I would go with DDR4 instead of DDR5. Yes, I know DDR5 is the future of it, and you're not going to have to upgrade anything later, but try finding it. That's my only thought there. Try finding it. Incidentally, I did find a Ryzen 3 3100 on NewEgg. I found it on Amazon, a few other places, about 230, 240 bucks. Same price as, same basic price you're going to pay for any of the other ones, within 20 or 30 bucks. I did find on NewEgg for 149 bucks. You just going to have to try to find it, because it says limited availability, only one per customer type thing. 149. If you're fast, you can catch it. If not, maybe it'll show up again sometime. But anyway, I was able to find it, so I don't want to say they're impossible, but it's more like a unicorn. So I'll have to do a test on that as well. My thought is, if you're looking for something in the lower range, you can find good deals on 4-core 8-thread Intel's, decent motherboard and DDR4 memory, and that might be the way to go. But if you're looking for something a little bit more power, and you're say you don't want to get rid of the motherboard and everything you've already got, I would just go with something like a 5600, maybe a 5700G, if you can find it for about the same price. They've been going on sale where they're almost the same price, and they're as cheaper than the 5600X and the 5800X. So that might be the way to go. Don't waste your money trying to hunt down a 4-core 8-thread right now. Try to waste your money on a 4-core 8-thread Ryzen 3, because even like the 3100X and 3300X, which are great processors, you're not going to be able to find them cheap. So that's my thought. I don't know if I steered you guys in the right direction or wrong direction. Hopefully it's something to think about, or food for thought, or whatever. Right now, it is still difficult trying to get parts. Maybe 6 months from now, things will get better. But if you're in a hurry to do something now, or if you're just itching to upgrade to Windows 11, maybe go Team Blue, or maybe, like I said, go with a 5600 or 5700G. That might be the most cost-effective way, and it's a step up. You would very, very much notice a step up in performance. So, like I said, that's all I got for right now, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and throw a like on it. If not, I get it. That's totally cool. But let me know why if you have to throw a dislike. Leave me any kind of comment. What are your thoughts? What is it you're thinking about? Do you think it's better to go ahead and upgrade to a lower core count CPU as opposed to an older one that has higher count? Or does it make any difference to you? Or are you just holding out for the next set of CPUs and everything anyway? I don't know. Maybe you're holding out for a GPU still. Yeah, those are difficult to get right now too. I sympathize with you. Don't forget to visit me on the other socials. And until next time, folks, that's all I got. So I will see you later.